Well, hello, everybody. It is February, and Robert and I, guess what? We're working remotely, but we're still talking rules of golf. And we both watched, of course, with great interest this past weekend, where we had some serious talk about the rules of golf, thanks to Patrick Reed and in the embedded ball rule. So I'm going to go ahead and take my position. That ball was not embedded. If you didn't see it, his ball bounced and then went into the deep rough. And he said he followed a procedure that was kind of bizarre. He marked and lifted the ball, and then he set it aside and thought it was embedded, called in a rules official, and they ultimately said, yep, it's embedded. How could a ball embed when it bounced? Number one. Number two, how could a ball embed in that deep of grass? There's no chance. In my opinion, the rules official should have asked, did anybody see the ball bounce? Because if a ball bounces in those conditions, I see no way that it could have embedded. So, of course, with Patrick Reed's reputation, it created quite the stir. What are your thoughts, Robert?
Yeah, well, obviously I was watching the golf this weekend, and that kind of took over the coverage. You know, the first thing is we're never going to truly know if it was embedded. The only person that knows is Patrick Reed and potentially the rules official. It's kind of a gray area, you know, when we look at what an embedded ball is. There is some wiggle room. You know, the rules don't say, oh, it has to be extremely embedded or 50% embedded. If we look at a diagram here, which the new rules of golf have added these pictures to the rules, we can kind of look through and kind of see what an embedded ball is and how it could fit that mold. So here, this is, again, a picture from the rule book here. Rule 16.3a is what we're operating under. The ball has to break the level of the ground, right? So in options 1 and 2, the ball has broke the level of the ground. And in option 2, there's, as Ed has put it, a little bit of insulation there. Maybe it's not totally touching the surface of the dirt, but the rules say that's embedded. And again, it doesn't say it has to be 50% or 25%. When we see an embedded ball, a lot of times that thing is cratered. That is embedded. You know, the ball doesn't have to be terribly embedded to be embedded. It just needs to be embedded. Again, is it unlikely that the ball embedded by falling from such a short height? Maybe, but we know that the course is extremely wet, enough so that they were playing lift clean in place in the fairway. While this wasn't obviously in the fairway, we know the course was wet and it could have happened. We know Rory McIlroy had a similar situation. He was similarly just as adamant that his ball embedded. So while it may not have cratered, did it embed? Maybe. Again, Patrick Reed thought so, yes, and the rules official thought so. So
let's talk about procedure. So I thought that was really interesting. So again, just to be clear on this slide, the first two balls here are embedded, even though the second one, there is a little bit of grass in between the plane of the dirt, as opposed to the first one where the ball is actually in contact with dirt. Both of those balls are embedded. The final one, the one on the bottom, is not, because if you think of it, the plane of a goal line, so like in football, that ball has not broken the plane of the goal line. I'm taking the position that neither Rory McIlroy's ball nor Patrick Reed's ball broke the plane of the dirt because they bounced. Now, in fairness, neither player saw their ball land, so they didn't know, and they're doing the best they can. But I've always taken issue with this because I think balls tend to nestle in deep grass, and I'm going to rule it's pretty hard for a ball to, even in soft conditions, to really break that plane of the dirt. Now, obviously, if it's a 300-yard shot, that, you know, it can happen for sure. But again, I think both players were out of bounds taking relief and getting out of jail free. But I really didn't like the way Patrick proceeded, because he lifted the ball, and then rather than holding it very carefully, he put it down. The whole idea is when you've lifted a ball to determine if it's embedded, you can't clean it. Well, putting it into deep grass is a pretty good chance you're going to clean it in doing that. So not only, I just didn't like the way he handled the whole thing. What are your thoughts, Robert?
Well, the procedure, it was correct. I mean, the way he did it, you know, you don't have to call a rules official over. Now, maybe the sequence of events could have been better, sure, but the player's not required, and this is, again, a new change to the rules in 2019, the player's not required to announce or bring anybody over. The player needs to mark it, lift it, look at it, say, this is my ball. Yes, it's embedded. I can see that. And then they can take relief or not take relief. After Patrick did that, he did call the rules official over and said, hey, I want you to look at it. Ideally, you know, when you on the PGA Tour, you probably call the rules official in first and say, hey, I'm going to do this. I want you to watch me because I want to make sure we're good here. Because again, embedded ball, there is sometimes some gray area, having looked at a few, whether it's embedded or not. They're not all that cut and dry. So in that regard, technically the procedure is correct. I mean, if he's in an event without cameras or rules officials everywhere, that's totally fine. Just the scrutiny, in my opinion, gets dialed up when there's cameras everywhere and you're playing for millions of dollars on the tour. Everything needs to be on the level, and technically, as was the procedure is correct.
And you can make you can make an argument that it was actually Rory that was out of bounds because he never called an official over. At least Patrick Reed called for a confirmation, and we all know that Patrick Reed has a reputation of being a little bit fast and loose with the rules, as opposed to Rory, who has a great squeaky clean reputation. So I think there's the old adage of his reputation preceded him is definitely true here. So let's cut to the chase. My opinion, no way was that ball embedded. If you agree with me, you're correct. Go ahead and vote for Ed. If you think Robert's correct that those balls were embedded and they both were okay, then you can vote with Robert. You know how to vote. As Blake Shelton would say, right here, right here. I can't really do that. Right there, baby.